So, hi John, this year's Gamescom interview for the Amiga Future. We're glad that you're with us. And well, would you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, well, first of all, hi guys. Thanks for having me back again. Great to see you again. My name is John Girvin. I'm from Northern Ireland. I grew up in the 80s with machines like the VIC-20 and Amstrad CPC, and then probably quite late in the day, I got an Amiga 500 in 1991. And a few days later, I got an A1200, and I think that was probably when computers peaked for me. I didn't really move off the A1200 until about 2009. Amiga things, I probably didn't do very much of note until the late 90s when I started making hard drive installers. So I made about 35 of those, and some of those were even before WSD load. Recently, I've made a few games for PC and mobile, and one of those got ported to Amiga. So you may have heard of Dodgy Rocks. It was released a little while ago, came out in Amiga, and it's quite popular. And then recently, of course, the past year or so, I've been working on a larger game for Amiga, which came out in July of 2021. That was Turbo Tomato. And here we are, bang up to date.
Yeah, speaking of Turbo Tomato, yeah, well, we are of course very interested in anything you can tell us about this project. As far as I know, it has some development story behind it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you count the time between when I started it and when it was released, it's about 28 years worth of story. Well, obviously I haven't been working on it completely that time. So around 1993, my brother had a comic book that he was drawing at school, and it had some vegetable type characters in it, Turbo Tomato and Cucumber and Wimpy and various names like that. That's long gone now, and we tried to find it, we couldn't, but and we also both happened to have Amiga 1200s, and we both also happen to be fans of an arcade game called Buddha-san, or you might know that as Psycho Pigs. It's a crazy game about pigs running about and throwing bombs at each other and trying to kill each other. So my brother Adam, he started making a game in Amos on his A1200. I was doing something else in the Amiga at the time. He didn't get very far with it, and then maybe around autumn of 1993, we decided to work on a game called Turbo Tomato together. So Adam did the graphics, and I started rewriting the engine in assembly instead of Amos. And then over the next, maybe 4 years, but extremely part-time between Adam being at school and me being at university and jobs and things like that. So the course of maybe 4 years, we both worked on it and got to the stage of 1997. I released a demo on the internet in 1997. It was at that time, after working on it for 4 years, I think we were both quite bored with it, and it wasn't really moving along quite quickly enough. So the 1997 demo was, this is it, we're finished with it. It's never going to be finished. Here it is. There's thousands of bugs, and half the levels are missing, and but maybe you'll enjoy it. So here it is. Download it, have fun, and kind of just left it at that. Then, so a few years passed, and we got into the 2000s, and the idea of finishing Turbo Tomato never really went away with us. So Alan tried again on the PC and did a few things with Blitz Basic on the PC. We both sort of had ideas of doing things with it over the course of the 2000s and 2010s, but just nothing ever really got together because everybody was busy and had kids, and you know how life goes. And then so fast forward to March 2020. I just released a game on the PC, a solitaire game. I was looking around for the next thing to do. I had some ideas of what to do and started doing things, but then I thought, well, you know what? I've got this Amiga game from 20 years ago, and it's probably 80% finished. He said, why don't we start that? Because, I've been doing, Dodgy Rocks had come out, and I was kind of back in the Amiga scene again after a few years away, and so it sort of, let's see if we can get this going. After a bit of effort and sort of digging through old hard drives and things like that, I managed to get Turbo Tomato kind of building again, the old 1997 demo with all the bugs and everything. Got that building again, and I kind of just went on from there. Worked on it for about a year on and off, part-time again, between work, kids, families, all that stuff. And then finally, it was released. I think probably half motivated by showing it to people at Amiga Ireland, and getting quite positive feedback, even given the absolute jankiness of the demo. I thought it was terrible. I just stuck it on the laptop and let it run, but people came over and played it, so I was kind of, maybe there's something here. Maybe it is worth finishing. And, that's kind of the nutshell story of Turbo Tomato.
Yeah, I think it's one of the first of all, I'd say the waiting was worth it. It's certainly one of the fastest, if not the fastest pace action game on the small Amigas. Was it hard to balance the gameplay? Because it's quite different to other games in the fact that the enemies throw bombs at you and you have to throw the same bombs at them and so on. It's quite different than the usual shoot 'em up where there's a certain pre-programmed set of enemies of whatever kind. Was it hard to get it right to balance it?
Yeah, well, you're right. It is definitely a frantic game. The interaction of the enemies actually effectively stealing your ammunition, does change things a little bit, for sure. And the enemies aren't in patterns; they're reactive to what you're doing. They chase you. They go to pick up bombs. There's a certain amount of reaction AI, if you like, in there. Well, it was very basic. Balancing did take a lot of time, actually. Then I got the 97 demo working and started to play it, and the difficulty was all over the place. The first level was easy, but the third level was impossible. Other levels were somewhere in between those two. It was kind of, it was an absolute mess. There was a lot of stuff had gone into the early builds that were just not planned or not thought about, and with 25 years of extra experience, you could see those things. They were right there and obvious. So the balance, I think that was probably one of the first things I did once I got the game running was, here's all the enemies. Let's give them let's balance out their attributes. So the speed and their strength and their intelligence is all balanced across the range, and then we'll give all these enemies like a difficulty score of how hard they are to kill, and then I'll put all this into an enormous spreadsheet, and here's the 35 levels, and here's the enemies and all the levels. Let's add up the difficulties and see how difficult each level is and draw a graph of it. And it was a spiky graph all over the place. Once I had that tool built, spreadsheets are enormously useful for game development, as you probably know. I used that to tweak rewrite the enemies in each level, and say, we've got this level will have these four, and this level will have these four, until the difficulty graph was looking a lot nicer, sort of ramping up over the course of a world and then dropping back a little bit for a break, and then ramping up again a bit higher and then back for a break, and just like that over the course of the game. So that got the basic balance in place, but then we started we did a lot of play testing obviously as well, and adjusted different things and that. And you know, the final world, even with the spreadsheet, was still, you know, impossible for normal humans to complete. Yeah, and then so we toned all that back and made it a bit more playable, and put in a couple of more dynamic things as well. So, for example, the enemy speed will limit itself to your speed. So if you haven't picked up a lot of power-ups, the enemies can't outrun you, and their bombs can't outrun you, so you feel like you have a chance at catching them. And it feels, that actually made quite a bit of difference to the feel of the game. It made it feel much more fair and less random when you died.
Yeah.
So there was quite a bit of effort was put into balancing the game. I'm not sure it was exactly right, because it does feel quite easy in places, and some players are saying, "Oh, I've just gone straight through this; it's too easy." So,
I mean, you can't be everybody's darling. I mean, yeah.
I can't. One of the things I wanted to do to modernize Turbo Tomato was to sort of make it more accessible for as many players as possible. So, that's why I put in things like unlimited continues and skip levels, built-in trainers and things like that. And the difficulty level was adjusted so that most people could play it. Maybe it'll disappoint hardcore gamers, but at the same time, it's a very popular game with children, and so it had to sort of tend towards perhaps the easy side of things as well. So it was there's trade-offs with everything. Maybe a hard mode. I could add a hard mode or something. I'm sort of considering that at the minute, just to satisfy the people who are much better at games than I am. I can't complete it.
Yeah.
What's the better on balance?
I didn't get that.
So I just saying there's lots of effort put into balance in the game, and trying to make it play well.
Yeah, exactly. From the specs, which I read on Polyplay, I guess it was. It sounded as if the game required 1 megabyte chip RAM. Is that correct, or is it 512 kilobytes chip and 512 slow RAM?
No, it's a megabyte of chip. It needs a megabyte of chip. Yeah, I mean, obviously it'll run faster if you have some fast RAM, but it definitely needs a megabyte of chip and Kickstart 2.
What was the primary chip RAM eater of the game?
Let's say laziness. Well, no. The scrolling is done very simply to keep things simple. It's just a big dumb bitmap that gets scrolled around, 2 of them, so it uses quite a lot of chip RAM. But the way I thought about it, when Turbo Tomato started in 1993, it was kind of different times. The A1200 was quite new. There was chat about AAA chipsets and Hombre chipsets and new machines and new CPUs. So trying to make a half meg chip game in 1993 was backward looking. Now maybe things have changed today, and people are digging out their A500s from the late 80s, and they have half meg chip and Kickstart 1.3, and they're expecting to run new games on these. And well, Turbo Tomato's not from that time. So there's decisions made in the engine and constructing the game, like there's 160k of bit planes, there's about the same amount of enemy graphics, 40 or 50k of player graphics, and you're up to 400k now, more or less, and that's before you've got any code in.
Yeah.
So with a lot of rewriting, it could possibly be made to work on a half meg chip machine, but the overlap between half meg chip and Kickstart 2 is quite small, so I'm not sure that the effort there would be entirely worth it.
Yeah.
There's more games to make.
Yes.
There's more games to make.
Yeah.
I had a few emails about it. People, I've had a few emails about it not running on half meg chip machines, but it's one of these things. It's just that's how it is.
The thing is, I was wondering because just one day ago I read through through one of the latest Amiga Futures and actually found a typo where some game was tested and it said it required 1 megabyte chip RAM, and it turned out it didn't. It was a classic 512 slow RAM situation. So I wanted to make sure if the information is correct this time.
Oh, it's definitely one megabyte chip. It'll run at 50 frames most of the time on an A500. But if you have a bit of fast RAM or if you have a faster CPU, it shouldn't really drop below 50 frames. It's nice.
Yeah. Well, our next question would be, well, yeah, maybe you indirectly covered it already, more or less. Was there anything particularly technically challenging in the game? Something where you'd say, ah, damn that chipset, or something like that?
Yeah. Getting to run quickly on a base on a 1 meg 500 was probably the hardest part. I think the biggest part of that was getting the background restoration done quickly enough. You know, it's using your standard sort of 16 by 16 tile kind of background, and the way blur works and things like that, and the size of the enemies. It means in a basic implementation of it, you're going to be restoring a lot of background and doing a lot of overwrites. So there's quite a complicated system in there to try and save blitter time with restoring the background by kind of tracking which areas are actually damaged. It's not perfect. There's some approximations in it to speed it up, but you know, with I think it does save quite a few blitter cycles every frame. Yeah, so it took a while to get right, but the game was really finished in terms of content a few months before it was due to be released because of Bitmap's schedules. So it had a bit of time to try and optimize it and get it working better and do a lot of play testing and things like that. So that was one of the things I did in that time. So I think, yeah, it was worth it because it did definitely speed things up when getting in smaller machines. So that was probably the most complicated part. I mean, there's other bits of the game that are large, like the 4 bosses are essentially little games in themselves, and put maybe 8,000 or 10,000 lines of code and a bunch of graphics. So there's work there, but it's not particularly complicated. But yeah, keeping the speed up was probably the challenge with every Amiga game.
And what we've seen, the game is also available in a box, and it looks quite like a really high quality box. I like it if a game is sold in a box. But can you please tell us something about the process of producing such a box? Where do the artwork come from, or like this?
Well, so the box was produced by Bitmapsoft to actually publish it. At the start, sort of way early on in the project, or 2020 thereabouts, Bitmapsoft had got Stu Cambridge, who had done a lot of Amiga pixel work in the past, and he did California and things like that. And he's working as an artist and designer now, and they got him to do the main art, that you see on this poster, if you can make it out. So that was combined with some text that I wrote, and then Darren at Bitmapsoft did the box design for that, so the front and the back, and designed the manual and designed the disc label based off the main art that Stu Cambridge had done. I can't speak to the actual physical construction of the boxes. I don't know how that was done. That was a bit, I sort of contracted that out, but yes, Yeah, so really my role was writing the text for the manual and the blurb on the back and providing a few screenshots and designs put together with the main art and produced somewhere. Just a second. I have the box. You can see the box. Yeah, it's a very sort of heavy, high quality box, and there's you get posters and a nice red floppy disk inside. It's it's a great package, and it is, you say, it's very high quality production. Very pleased with how it's turned out. And it does live on the shelf behind me all the time. That's where I keep it.
Yeah, you put quite some effort into a rather unusual Facebook campaign. I don't know if any other channel was involved other than Facebook, but I saw it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody of our viewers saw it. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that one, and also how much booze you had taken before coming up with all those weird ideas.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was Tony Axness' idea.
Okay. That explains.
So I'm not sure how much Tony had to drink when he thought about it, but I was entirely sober when I made it, so I don't know what that says about me either. Yeah, so the idea was, let's have a bit of fun and let's try to make some sort of viral marketing campaign adjacent to, on the run up to the release of Turbo Tomato. And, so we produced these series of images that didn't explicitly say Turbo Tomato's coming. It was just sort of silly fruit characters made out of real fruits and pipe cleaners and stickers and staples and paper clips and anything else that was lying about. So the Facebook page is called The Tomatoes Are Coming, so it's still there. You can go and grab all the pictures from that. Yeah, so Tony's idea, but it was me that went and got the fruit and made the characters and crawled around in the garden on a sunny day and took pictures of these crazy fruit characters, and I made the posters and came up with the slogans for them and sort of putting them on Facebook. And yeah, I mean, it was a bit of fun for sure. I think people guessed pretty quickly what was happening because we weren't being quiet about Turbo Tomato coming up. But yeah, the page itself, I think it got 160, 180 people actually following the tomato, the picture page, the Tomatoes Are Coming page. People were a few comments on it, and lots of sharing of those pages. I think I possibly got banned from the Amiga groups on Facebook for sharing them too much. Yeah, so the Tomatoes Are Coming page, it was a bit of fun. It was quite popular, and then of course they relinked those people to actually send off and buy the game. I don't know, was it effective? I but it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, in a positive way. It reminded me on some some 80s trash movies, like Killer Tomatoes or stuff like that.
Yeah, there were a few movie references in the posters for sure. I think the Predator.
Yeah.
It was possibly my favorite one.
Very nice idea. I mean, it was something different.
Yeah, it was something different. And get people talking about it, and it was fun. Yeah, the page is still there, so you can check them out.
So, is there anything you are working on right now? Some projects in the pipeline?
Working on right now, no. I've been quite busy with the sort of follow-up of the release of Turbo Tomato. Just different different things to do and different people to talk to and lots of comments and things to reply to. And one or two bug fixes, only a few. I'm quite pleased with that, only a few. I will probably, I said earlier, I'm probably thinking about putting maybe a hard mode into Turbo Tomato in a patch release and making that available. I'd left some bits in the code where that would make that quite easy because I always had a notion that I might need that. So that's probably coming next. Beyond that, to be honest, I haven't worked on anything. I'm just too tired after finishing Turbo Tomato after 28 years. But yeah, I mean, before I started it back on TT in 2020, I had started a different style of game entirely. I started that on the PC, just sort of getting a few ideas together. So probably going to run with that. Entirely different from Turbo Tomato. More like it's quite a mishmash of things. Maybe a bit like a dungeon crawler, but with more puzzles.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you think graphics-wise, that kind of Zelda orthographic 2D Chaos Engine sort of look is what I'm thinking of, but these are ideas right now. I haven't written anything down. I certainly haven't written any code for it. The notion would be for this to come out on Amiga, Spectrum Next, and possibly PCs as well. So I'm designing it like that from the start.
That sounds very promising.
It's certainly ambitious, let's say that. But yeah, like anything.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, like anything, these are ideas, and once you get the prototype, then it might be terrible ideas. So you find these things out. So we'll see. We'll see. That's the plan anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are more or less out of questions for now. Bernd, do you have anything else?
No additional questions, thank you.
All right, guys.
All right, yeah, thank you once more.
All right. Have a good day then. Cheers.